I walked through every layer of existence. These pages are not merely a life story. They are the testament of a man who personally witnessed how societies and states reach the end of their lives, how they fall ill, and how they die. Chapter 1. First Steps in a Crumbling World and the Black Death. My childhood passed within the discipline of a family tradition intertwined with scholarship and politics. Quran, Hadith, jurisprudence, linguistics. Yet my true attention was not on the order within books, but on the disorder outside them. In those years, the Maghreb, North Africa, was a savage laboratory where every day a new ruler emerged, dynasties murdered one another, and cities were plundered one day and abandoned the next. I grew up inside that laboratory. Then, in 1348, the Great Destruction arrived at our doorstep, the Black Death. The plague swept through us like a merciless storm, taking not only my mother and father, but also everything I once believed to be unshakable. Cities emptied, palaces fell silent. As I watched my teachers, friends, and family disappear one by one, I realized something fundamental. Nothing built by human hands, no empire, no fortress, no system, is eternal. If everything is destined to perish, then the only thing capable of keeping a person standing is a sharp mind, adaptable to changing conditions, and a library of knowledge powerful enough to rebuild the world again. This tragedy did not destroy me. On the contrary, it forged the famous analytical mind for which I later became known. A mind stripped of sentimentality, examining events with the calm precision of a surgeon's blade. From that day onward, I saw the world as a stage play, and myself as both an actor inside it and a critic recording its hidden flaws. Chapter 2. The Bloody Chambers of Politics and the Art of Value. At the age of 20, I entered government service. What began in Tunis as the duty of writing the Sultan's official seal soon transformed into a relentless struggle for survival. Tunis, Fez, Tlemcen, Granada. One day I was the chief secretary of a ruler, the next a chained prisoner of his rival. When Sultan Abu Inan imprisoned me in Fez for nearly 2 years, I did not waste time mourning my fate. Instead, I studied why a ruler inevitably grows suspicious even of his most loyal servants, and how absolute power drives the human soul toward paranoia. Inside palaces, I observed the same truth repeatedly. Rulers possess armies, treasures, and authority, yet they are all deeply afraid. Each one desperately needs an intellect capable of reading the soul of society, transforming diplomacy into an art form, and legitimizing the system in the eyes of the people. I told them openly, no one can serve you better than I can. No one can decode this chaos in your favor more effectively than I. Being indispensable is not merely a political trick, it is a technical mastery. If you wield knowledge like a shield, even the executioner knows. The sword he raises against you may become the cause of his own downfall. The first rule of politics is this: never personalize events. If a ruler wrongs you, it is not simply because he is evil, it is because the political structure of that moment demands it. I survived because I could even look upon my enemies as necessities created by the system itself. Chapter 3. The Fall of Andalusia and the Discovery of Asabia. Escaping the chaos of Fez, I traveled to Granada in Andalusia, the homeland of my ancestors. My friendship with Sultan Muhammad V and his vizier Ibn al-Khatib revealed to me the very summit of civilization. As I wandered through the magnificent geometry of the Alhambra Palace, listening to its fountains and reading poetry inscribed upon its walls, I realized I was witnessing not triumph, but the aesthetic of decline. Urban life had softened the people. Comfort, dependency, and fear had consumed them. The hard, pure founding will that once built civilization had disappeared. It was there that I formulated the central concept of my theory. Asabiyya, social cohesion. I observed that communities surviving under the harsh conditions of deserts and steppes develop a collective spirit by depending on one another. This shared consciousness grants them the strength to conquer cities and establish kingdoms. But the moment they settle into luxurious palaces, silk garments, fine meals, and fortified walls, decay begins. Comfort first softens a people, then makes them selfish, and finally transforms them into servants of their own pleasures. My influence over the Sultan in Granada became so great that even my old friend Ibn al-Khatib began to fear me. The moment I felt the icy winds of power closing around me, I understood I had to leave. A wise man must recognize that the moment he begins to rise is also the moment he begins to decay. One must find the courage to walk away before the scent of comfort and authority becomes a prison. Chapter 4: Strategic Withdrawal and the Birth of the Muqaddimah. When I returned to North Africa, politics had become a river of blood. Tribes slaughtered one another and dynasties collapsed like houses made of paper. In 1375, I abandoned everything and withdrew into the fortress of Ibn Salama in Algeria. Outside, the world burned. Inside, I entered 4 years of profound silence. The modern world constantly urges people to remain visible, connected, and at the center of the stage. Yet I discovered the power of disappearance, the strength of strategic isolation. Once people believed I was no longer dangerous, all pressure vanished. And within that absolute solitude, one of history's greatest intellectual works was born, the Muqaddimah. I transformed history from a chaotic collection of rulers' names and battle dates into a science, a system of mechanisms. Like an architect studying the structure of a building, I analyzed the foundations of states themselves. Withdrawal is not escape, it is renewal. I stepped away from the stage and observed the entire theater from above. When I returned, I was no longer merely a bureaucrat, but a scholar possessing the unshakable authority of a man capable of explaining the world itself. Chapter 5: Great Loss by the Nile and the Egyptian Years. Exhausted by the endless chaos of the Maghreb, I traveled in 1382 to Cairo, the paradise of the world. Sultan Bark welcomed me as a savior scholar and appointed me chief judge. But fate never allowed me to forget my mortality. The ship carrying everything I had built in life, my wife, my children, and my priceless library, sank during a violent storm off the coast of Alexandria. Everything, everyone, disappeared into the dark waters of the sea. That day, sitting alone on the shores of Cairo, I understood that my theories of collapse did not apply only to empires. They applied equally to personal worlds. I faced the greatest tragedy a man can endure, losing everything. Yet as I wrote in my own works, weeping before fate is weakness. I transform pain into an instrument of observation. If the world is made of iron, then we too must become flexible enough to bend without breaking. I continued teaching, administering justice, and refining the Muqaddimah. Everything you love may one day vanish from your hands, but your intellect, your rare capacity to interpret events, may remain the only survivor of the sinking ship. Chapter 6: The Deadly Game on the Walls of Damascus. The final great gamble of my life unfolded in 1401 upon the walls of Damascus. I was 70 years old. Timur's army surrounded the city, building towers from human skulls. Fear consumed the people. I was secretly lowered from the fortress walls inside a giant basket to negotiate peace. When I entered Timur's tent, I stood not merely before a conqueror, but before a force capable of reshaping world history. Everyone expected my execution within moments. Instead, I approached Timur not as a servant, but as a scholar capable of justifying his greatness. For 35 days I spoke to him of history. I reflected his ancestry, conquests, and imperial ambitions back to him through the lens of my own philosophy of history. I held up a mirror before him, and what he saw in it was so magnificent that even Timur, a machine of destruction, became captivated by the intellect of an old man. He desired blood. I offered him immortality. In those tense conversations, I demonstrated how even brute force ultimately bows before pure intelligence. I managed to save at least part of Damascus and pull myself and my students out of the fire. It was the final and brightest victory of my art of survival. No matter how powerful the force before you may be, if you can satisfy its psychological hunger, you can guide it with your own hands. Chapter 7. Power, Morality, and Realism. Many compare me to Machiavelli, yet centuries before him I proclaimed that power does not move according to emotions or abstract moral formulas, but according to necessity and asabiya. When rulers imprisoned me, I did not waste time hating them. Instead, I studied why the system itself forced them to act that way. The Khaldunian perspective is this: do not personalize events. If you believe a ruler has wronged you, it is often not because he is personally evil, but because the continuation of the system requires such behavior at that moment. This understanding frees you from rage and shifts your focus from revenge to strategy. True freedom lies in understanding the system so deeply that you can appear to belong to it while keeping your soul completely outside it. Conclusion: my final advice to the human of the future. Now you, hearing my voice 6 centuries later, perhaps you are sitting in a modern office inside the crowds of a great city or standing at the edge of a personal crisis. Do not fear the complexity of the world around you, because the past resembles the future more than water resembles water. Yesterday there were kings. Today you have global corporations and ideologies. Yesterday there were shields. Today there are cyber attacks and wars of data. But the type of person who survives chaos has never changed. The one who observes events from above, refuses to drink from the poison of blind partisanship, and transforms knowledge into a tool of survival. The comfort, security, and stability promised to you are often illusions. The only thing truly real is your ability to analyze events deeply and your courage to descend into darkness when necessary. Every crisis, if properly understood, is the beginning of a new muqaddimah. I am Abdulrahman Ibn Khaldun. I began my journey inside a giant basket lowered from a fortress wall, and I ended it by leaving one of the deepest traces in human history. Now it is your turn. Are you ready to build your own asabiya and stand upright in an age of collapse? Remember this: the world always collapses. Only the prepared are capable of building a new world from the ruins. If this gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe. See you, my friend.